It's the root of aging itself at the biological level. So if we can suppress that, we are keeping ourselves younger and further away from disease formation, further away from degeneration.
Today we have Dr. Jeff Gross on the show. He is a Berkeley educated medical and stem cell bio nerd with more than 25 years of clinical experience. He has dedicated his life to helping others by thinking and acting out of the box. Dr. Gross, welcome to the Functional Nurse Practitioner podcast.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, we are thrilled to have you here. And friends, grab a notebook and a pen because we are diving into regenerative medicine today. Before we get into it, Jeff, I always like to ask my guests a very simple question.
Yeah.
What brought you into the realm out of the traditional clinical background that you came from into the world of stem cells and regenerative medicine? We would love to know.
Thank you. A few things, and I think I might overlap with you on this one. Traditional medical care is so watered down and lackluster these days in America. I saw frustrated patients, and I was frustrated. So that was the first thing. The second thing is by training, I'm a neurosurgeon. I have a fellowship in spine. I was treating for decades neck and back problems, disc problems, pinched nerves, all kinds of things. And, the menu for treatment traditionally is, anti-inflammatories, medications, therapies, perhaps chiropractic, physical therapy, rehabilitation, and then pain management for certain types of injections to the spine. And many people do well with those, but some do not. And the some that do not, that continue to have problems, then the only thing left on the menu is surgery. But so many people, and at least this physician, don't want to do surgery unless we absolutely have to. So I wanted to help fill that gap between those non-surgical things and the surgical things. And patients would come in and say, yeah, I'm still hurting, but I'm just not ready for surgery. Great. I would say, let's delay that. But what else can we do? And they'd say, how about this? How about that? How about stem cells? And luckily, chance favors the prepared mind. And I do have undergraduate background in biochemistry and molecular cell biology, and stem cells were an interest of mine. But back in the 1980s, when I went to college, stem cells were too new. So a lot's happened, and I decided finally, after hearing it enough times, to go back and retrain and re-educate. And about 6-7 years ago, I decided I was going to add stem cell based medicine or regenerative medicine for my spine patients. But it has blossomed into so much more than I could have imagined. And this is a version 2.0 of my practice. I love it. I'm doing less neurosurgery and more anti-aging, longevity, wellness, health span, and a lot of musculoskeletal work, mostly joints and spine, using regenerative biologics.
Well, wow. Okay, you're speaking my language, and I'm sure the listeners are on the edge of their seats like, what is Jeff going to teach us today?
So, right? Yeah, there'll be a quiz, so take notes.
Don't tell me that. I get very nervous. And then, yeah. So why don't we start first with a question I'm sure many listeners are likely thinking, like, What are stem cells?
Great. So let's break that down. So stem cells is a generic phrase for many things. First of all, when we're an embryo and a fetus and growing inside the womb, we are made of all stem cells. Those cells are amazingly powerful. They can create organs and limbs and brains and body parts in the right order and shape. And then when we're born, we grow for 20 years or so. And during that time, the stem cells are active in making us larger and developing our brain and all that. And during that time and after that time, we retain some of these powerful cells, not as powerful as in the embryo. And those cells are used to heal us. If you hurt yourself, if you have to, break a bone and you need to heal it, or you cut yourself, or we replace and turn over cells inside our body all the time. We have new skin cells. We make cells in our liver as needed. And all of those come from what's called stem cells because they can differentiate, or meaning transform into a type of cell we may need. And the ones when we're adults are called multipotent stem cells. They can only help in certain arenas. They can't regrow a limb yet. They can't replace an entire organ yet. Although we're learning more about how to push them or induce them backwards into more of an embryonic state, the applicable ones here now available in most settings are called multipotent stem cells, and we have them in our bodies. Now, as we're exposed to the world over years, and we are exposed to things that cause chronic inflammatory change, and now I know I'm speaking your language too, whether it's things in our food we shouldn't be having, hopefully to be removed soon, whether it's things in the water source, pesticides, things in the air, pollutants, electromagnetic waves, bad thoughts, neurostress, things like all these things that cause chronic inflammatory damage, slow down the behavior and the biology of our cells, including our stem cells, so they're not as good, and they can even become what's called exhausted. So as we age, we don't have the same power in our multipotent stem cells. So that's where regenerative medicine comes in.
Well, I'm glad this is being recorded, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to rewind and listen to that lots of times just to grasp it. Because first, can I just say our bodies are freaking amazing? So, and I love that you pointed out thoughts, like our thoughts, the negativity, things like that, and the impact that has systemically with inflammation, which I feel like so many people, it's a hard concept maybe to grasp, like, what does that matter? But I love that you brought that up. So we're definitely aligned with that. Yeah. Can you speak a bit more about exactly like what it is you're doing over there with stem cells, and maybe if you have like a best use case for stem cells, just to give the listener just a little bit more like context?
Sure. First we should probably talk about what we're using and where we get it, so we can make sure that the myths are all squashed down to nothing.
Love it.
And then we'll circle into some of the best applications that we have now and that we're showing great results. And all this is for educational purposes, Tara. The FDA has not yet approved for marketing claims any of the regenerative medicine biologic. That includes PRP, which is platelet-rich plasma. It includes stem cells, and it includes stem cell-derived signaling factors, which might include the word exosomes, which we can get into later. But all of these are in the stem cell realm, or the regenerative realm. So, first and foremost, you have two main sources of this stuff, and we call this regenerative biologics. And it's not, some people call it a product or a drug. It's not either, unless you're at the FDA and you called it a drug, and that certain companies are trying to drugify these things. But these are natural healing things that are made in a human body. And you can take them from your own body, like PRP is drawn from your bloodstream. And stem cells can be removed from your bone marrow or your fat. And that's okay. But I will admit to your audience and to you that I'm 59, and my 59-year-old stem cells, if they were so fantastic, then I wouldn't need regenerative medicine, right? So when I seek to advise someone as to the options, there's a much more active and potent option, and that's from the most youthful source. And the most youthful source comes from ethically donated materials right after a mother who's having a planned C-section delivers her baby. Congratulations! It's a boy. Got all its fingers and toes. Hey, by the way, the amniotic fluid and umbilical cord and placenta, you're done using that. We were going to throw it away. Can we keep it? And that's the source of the biologics that we're using.
Well, that's that's fascinating, and I definitely can appreciate you saying a 59-year-old body. I turned 50 this year, and I would want them from I would want my stem cell treatment to come from somebody else than me for sure.
Right.
Um, okay, so definitely I hear the myth that for it's some kind of this foreign substance because it is natural. So
Yep.
how about can we get into like how are you how are you like applying this, like using it
Right.
in real people?
So I obtain these materials from reputable and ironically FDA compliant and certified labs who
Okay.
receive the materials, test it, screen it, and send it to me on dry ice. And I have a special freezer. We keep it here in the office, so I always have a stock of it. I'm sort of a clinical end user, so I'm not. I have nothing to do with the donation, but I can tell you this: we're only receiving materials from donors who have not had the COVID vaccine. And that's not a political statement. What it is, it's a doctor saying we don't have enough information
Hmm.
about the long-term safety of what's happening at the genetic level from the vaccine. So we are just going to avoid it for now. Okay.
Okay.
So we're using the materials. My low-hanging fruit use is for osteoarthritis, painful degenerative joint. Some doctors use this crappy phrase called degenerative joint disease, but that's vague and poorly understood.
Hmm.
Um, and it can progress even though patients have what's called bone on bone, and then the orthopedic offers them a joint replacement. Well, I want to save those people as much as I can to delay and or even remove people from that joint replacement list. And that's what we're working on. That's what we're seeing results with. That's what we're doing. I'm not allowed to make any guarantees, of course, because of the
Hmm.
FDA status, nor would a physician make guarantees anyway, right?
Hmm.
Because it's a practice. But I'm injecting joints after we do some MRIs, special MRIs to look at the targeting. And we are following a protocol that's been around over 20 years, comes out of Europe. A lot of people 20 years ago would leave the country. Professional athletes would leave the
Hmm.
country to get stem cell treatments, and some people still do. But we have them right here. We just can't advertise. Google and Facebook will not let us advertise these things. So you don't hear about it as much here in the States, but it's here. You can search it. And we're injecting joints, and then it takes months. It's usually a one and done. And as opposed to a cortisone injection, which only lasts a number of weeks or months, and then although it helps the acute pain, it actually accelerates the degeneration. So,
Hmm.
and what's the opposite of degeneration? Regeneration. So that's what we're focusing on, is the regeneration. And we have some crazy good results now. We're collecting some MRIs after the fact, showing some thickening of the cartilage in the knees and things like that. So we are helping people regenerate their own joints. These people who created the joint in the first place, were just tapping back into the factory. That's the main thing that in the low-hanging fruit that we start with.
Well, the fact that you pointed out like a steroid injection, because that's the common treatment amongst so many people that come to see me. They've had this done. I
Yep.
know somebody in my program right now that just had it in her hip,
Yep.
and it didn't even really make that big of a difference.
Yeah.
And I love that you said it's not at first, it's not actually changing anything. It's not helping anything when we get a steroid, and it's actually, catabolic. So for the listener,
Right.
like it's not regenerating, like Jeff said, it's actually breaking it down.
Right.
And over time it makes things worse, but we don't usually look to reversing, putting things in remission. I'm going to use a word that's you can't use, but I'm going to use it anyway, curing things, because it's not in the model. It's not in the conventional model because it's driven by,
Right.
I'm going to get super feisty. I don't care. It's my show. It's driven by big pharma, and
It
there's a
is.
lot of money in that. Versus you said like MRI showing actual physical changes.
Yep.
which is not what's going to happen from steroids, like not in a positive way. Anyway, okay, so
Correct.
somebody, like you mentioned, an athlete. I've definitely heard of this. I'm sure the listener has. And for the listener out there, any comments, questions that you have for Jeff, definitely put them
Yeah.
into the comments below, because this is, like you said, you can't advertise about this, which I
Right.
don't think I don't agree with that, but I don't make the rules, because what you're offering, it's not really known, talked about, or somebody thinks that they have to fly overseas in order to get it done.
Right. Well, one of the
So
reasons that I'm here on your show, and thank you for having me, is to help get the word out and educate people that there are options. And you should just look at the options. You can still look at the surgical option or the cortisone options or the lubricating shots for the knees and things like that. Those are all reasonable things to do. This is just one other option that might be the most efficient option in the long run.
it definitely sounds that way, to me at least. So I can see an athlete that maybe an injury, or you said somebody with like osteoarthritis or even bone on bone, which is,
Yep.
that's huge.
Yeah.
That's like mind blowing. And I'm a nerd. So, but it's even mind blowing to me. So how about you mentioned the word earlier, and I hope exosome.
Right.
That's like weighing on me. Like, can we
All
talk
right.
about
Well,
what that is?
yeah, let's talk a little bit of that because it's really my passion now. So when I got into this field to add it to my career a few years ago, and I said, okay, I want to offer this to people. What am I going to use? What's the best thing out there? I'm not going to have 20 different things. What's the best one? Just let's cut to the chase, right? And it turned out that the work with stem cells was all over the world, right? And people are giving stem cells. You can get them in Central America and Mexico, Asia, Europe. And stem cells, when we put them, someone else's stem cells in your body, they're gone in 10 to 14 days. Okay. But the benefits last much longer, and some of the benefits might last forever. So wait a minute. If they're gone, what's still going on, right? Well, it turns out, and you're a biochemistry nerd like me, that those cells, those stem cells, are delivering a message to your cells to wake them up, to activate them, not only to your cells, but to your stem cells. And your body ends up doing the work. And it does that by sending a small packet of information well, not that a cell isn't small already, but a cell is measured across in microns, micrometers, which is, 1 times 10 to the minus 6 for the science nerds out there. Well, a small outpocketing off of the cell through a process of what's called exocytosis, if you remember that from biology, forms a little bubble of membrane, and in it, chock full of growth factors, peptides, proteins, messaging signals that reduce NF-kappa beta, if I can tag back into an earlier talk of yours, and some mRNAs that are then taken up by another recipient cell through endocytosis, and those materials are delivered into that cell to influence all the neighbors. So a stem cell might make thousands of these nanoparticles. They're measured across in nanometers, 1 times 10 to the minus 9, so about 1/1000th the size of a cell. And a stem cell produces these messages, and that message is an anti-inflammatory message. So when you take all your cells that are busy fighting the environment and the world in defense mode, aka chronic inflammation, and you flip their machinery over into an anti-inflammatory optimal mode, then they can do what they're supposed to do: make cartilage for the joint, produce anti-inflammatory, antioxidant repair proteins, suppress NF-kappa beta, which, as you know, is the definition of inflammation. The more NF-kappa beta you have in your cells, the more inflamed your system is. And chronic inflammation is the root of many, if not most, diseases of aging. It's the root of aging itself at the biological level. So if we can suppress that, we are keeping ourselves younger and further away from disease formation, further away from degeneration. So an exosome is one of these little bubbles, and we can skip ahead and just give exosomes. We don't need to give the stem cells. We can give the exosomes. And why would we do that? Well, one, they're way more abundant in amniotic fluid than the umbilical cord is smaller, right? Number two is they are easier to handle and store and deliver. Number three, they penetrate tissue better. They cross the blood-brain barrier because they're small enough. Cells do not. So they can get into the brain and the nervous system. And they're doing the work anyway. So I skipped ahead, and most of the time we use these stem cell derived exosomes in addressing joints and other problems that we'll probably get into.
Well, like my jaw dropped when you said, just talking about that. First, the size, that they're so tiny, and then, man, I'm trying to remember everything you said. Again, I'm glad this is recorded, and for our friends taking notes, drop them in the comments. The key point that I'm probably going to say right now, you said that it stimulates our own cells to do the work.
Right.
I need some of that. I feel like
we all, and let me give you an example, Tara. Think about a pregnant woman whose skin is amazing and whose hair and nails are growing wonderfully, typically whose mood is pretty good, and during the nesting phase. They usually don't have a lot of aches or pains, except maybe some back pain from carrying the weight. So why is that? That woman is getting a daily dose of exosomes crossing the placental barrier into her bloodstream.
And you said exosomes can cross the blood-brain barrier.
Blood-brain and placenta body barrier, yeah. And it's because they're nanoparticles. Some people call them nanoparticles.
I'm very interested in this. So if it can cross the blood-brain barrier, like, can you speak about maybe, like, I understand about a joint pain or, something going on with that, but how could this be utilized for something that, in particular, with crossing the blood-brain barrier?
Well, any neurological brain issue, spinal cord issue that involves inflammation, and many problems do, can have some biological benefit from suppressing that inflammation. Let's talk about Alzheimer's dementia. There's an inflammatory damage that's causing this misfolded proteins, these beta amyloid plaques and the tau proteins. So we can see, and we have seen in other studies, reduction in the symptoms, and in people who are at risk, and we don't have enough data over time, but I hope we see that we can help people prevent and delay the formation of those proteins. So if there's a familial risk or something like that, we see some benefits in other neurological diseases with inflammation, inflammatory diseases. MS would be probably the biggest example. MS is an autoimmune attack of the myelin sheath along the nerves, and then the groups of nerves don't work well, and you have symptoms related to that. So anyone who's having an acute flare-up, an exosome approach might be wonderful. Maybe prevention and suppression might be better than a lot of the interferon and other drugs that are out there, or a combination with those drugs. So if you had an acute transverse myelitis, which is uncommon but very devastating, it may be very useful, and other inflammatory diseases. Other neurologic diseases we've seen some interesting benefit in is in the autistic children. We're doing inhalational, so like a breathing treatment of the exosomes. They're so small they can get through the nasal membrane and the cribriform plate up through the nose, and we're seeing some benefits there. And then we have some long COVID people with neurologic, foggy head, and loss of smell and taste, and we're getting some benefit. I haven't cured completely smell and taste yet, and we're doing that. And then of course, traumatic brain injury and stroke recovery both have an inflammatory component. So we can't fix the loss of tissue, but we can help with reducing the inflammatory response which is part of this, helping address part of the symptoms.
Well, this just took like what I thought we were going to talk about, like to a whole other level. And I was going to ask you in particular about autoimmune disorders, because that's my passion as someone that has multiple. And when I saw antibodies to my myelin, it was terrifying because I could, like, my legs at the time, I couldn't feel my feet, and it was, and I kept falling down. I changed so much about what was happening inside of my body before there was actual like damage, like you talked about, because like I always say, if there's actually damage, like I don't have a thyroid anymore, it's not going to just come back because it's gone. Or if somebody has rheumatoid arthritis and their joints are seriously like deformed, I'm not going to be able to straighten the joints out, but preventing further damage. I'm very fascinated about this because you said earlier the impact of crossing the blood-brain barrier, because how it can impact the nervous system. Yeah. Which the immune system and the nervous system are my love language. Absolutely. But I mean, I can see like an application for this, especially with these exosomes. Boy, that's a hard word to say.
You did great.
I keep wanting to say exposome, but it's not the same thing, friends. It's not the same thing. And so these tiny, you said nanoparticles, and they can even be used through inhalation with kids. That's mind blowing.
Yep. And we continue to find new uses and places to try them. There's, most of the groundbreaking work is not done here in the US. It's done in China and Europe. They're ahead of us in this. We're late to the party. But we draw from a lot of the literature there. Most of the great articles come out of their literature, not ours. There's very little federal funding in this arena, so we just don't have the literature here. So maybe that'll change coming up soon. But we draw from that, and we are using it in autoimmune situations, thyroiditis, rheumatoid patients. And then there are 2 infections with, known for their chronic inflammatory problems that we use it. That would be Lyme's and long COVID.
Okay. And how, this is just fascinating to me. How about with another topic that I'm a very big nerd, but I think about like those lipopolysaccharides, which every time I talk about them, I'm like, don't Google it because it's terrifying. They're dying, they're dropping like flies, which are lipopolysaccharides, endotoxins. That's not the same if it gets through the gut wall into the bloodstream, as it's not like we have sepsis. But I think about that they can go to the brain. And I look at that as a potential. That's why do we have lipopolysaccharides getting through, like keep swimming upstream? But if it's already there, because I've done testing and I've seen this numerous times, like would that be something that could be a potential, like these exosomes could be used for?
Maybe as a cleanup, because there is an inflammatory response to lipopolysaccharides and endotoxins. But we do like to optimize people first, the kind of work you do. We want them to have a good microbiome in their gut. We want them to maybe be optimized hormonally if they're not. We want them to be properly, have the right supplements and nutrition and the best lifestyle they can with sleep and exercise and everything. Because if we're going to do the exosomes, we want their cells to be as receptive as necessary and not have any other obstacle. So, if we do all those things, you might clean up a leaky gut anyway. But if there's inflammatory damage or an acute setting, there can be a role for that. It's a great idea. I haven't done that for leaky gut yet, but it makes sense to me.
Well, first, can we just underscore this awesome doctor on the show today talking about nutrition and talking about maybe we should do something to like help sleep and think about nutrients we're missing and the most important parts of health, which are the modifiable lifestyle factors. Yeah. Because I guess what I'm hearing, you didn't say this, but I'm just going to speak for you, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can interrupt me and be like, nope, that's not what that's not it at all. But so I'm hearing you say that it's not just about shoving something in to do a purpose. Like somebody gets a test. Let's just stay on the lipopolysaccharides train for a second. And they have it. Well, now we're going to do the exosomes to deal with that without doing any of the basics. And maybe to extend that even to somebody with osteoarthritis or some other inflammatory condition that you would be using this for. Are you looking at the whole person approach is what I would love to know.
Yes. And I'll say it here, and I'll admit that right before we started the recording, I admitted to you that I wish we had more of this sort of functional medicine training during medical school, because medical school is so traditional and Western. And like you said, you have a problem, here's the one solution, the cookbook method, and it's now all automated and insurance company driven, watered down, garbage. So it doesn't really always help with the root cause. It doesn't address the underlying cellular problem. So I think there's a resurgence in that, and you're seeing it in the political landscape, and you're seeing it in a lot of doctors from Western medicine who have sort of opened their minds and sort of saying this isn't great. Pharmaceuticals for everything isn't great. And you're right, it is driven by big pharma and by big implant companies who make hip replacements and all those things. And these are multi-billion-dollar industries that the tail is wagging the dog, right? Let's create the disease to have a cure. And it's not a cure. There are so many better ways to lower your cholesterol, if you want to lower it or need to lower it, than statin medications, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you could take nattokinase or any, lots of different supplements and exercise, and it's controversial anyway. For example, 40 years ago, the normal cholesterol lab measurement was up to 240. And so if you had a cholesterol of 230, you were perfect. Now it's up to 200. They changed the number. Why? To sell more statins.
That makes my blood boil. Because in conventional medicine, we're looking, like you said so eloquently, like the training is, this is the disease, this is the drug, like essentially. Right. And maybe there's caveats for race, age, gender in there also, or try this first, do this second, whatever. Yeah. But it's not looking at the downstream effects of what that could cause, right? From taking a statin. And somebody, my background is women's health, was oncology, but then women's health. I care very much about hormones, right? And for the listener, cholesterol is the initial building block for us to make hormones. So if we don't have cholesterol,
right,
if we're only caring about a lab value, which is something I speak about it every single day, and I get really fired up about it. And I have women coming to me from all over, like, what should my lab value be, Tara? Like, what's your lab value? What dose are you on? Because I do so much with Hashimoto's and thyroid things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not about the labs. Like, labs matter, they matter, but it's so much more than that, and it's looking at the whole picture.
Right.
So it sounds like you are, I mean, not having the functional medicine training in med school, it's not there. It's not, just like in my nurse practitioner school, there was something about nutrition vaguely, but not anything about root cause.
Yeah.
Just about a pill for the ill. And frankly, I talk about this a lot, and if I piss people off, I don't care. But even in the functional medicine space, we're doing that.
Right.
Where it's a supplement for the ill. And if somebody comes to me and they're like, oh, I don't want to take a statin, what can I do? Well, we're going to be talking about, like, what are they willing to do? Are they willing to make any changes? Because there's supplements that can be very helpful, and I use them. And I'm of the mindset of doing them concurrently, like changing lifestyle, making changes, understanding why it's happening, of course, is the most important part. And then giving something, because it's supplements, and I take a lot of supplements. So this is a slight tangent, but we
Mhm.
did go down this rabbit hole of functional medicine. I do think it's important because what you're talking about with stem cells and the exosomes, I'm not looking at that as a supplement. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but it's actually, you said it's changing something.
Right. It's resignaling our cell, activity. So I don't think it's a supplement either.
Yeah.
Although there are exosomes in nature that we end up taking, and there are some that come through supplements. And if I can
Mm.
mention those, just so there's some overlap.
Yeah, please.
When you're sick, in most cultures, your grandmother makes you chicken soup. Why is that? Well, chicken soup comes from chicken stock, which means bones, and those bones have bone marrow, and bone marrow is the richest source of stem cells, and those stem cells produce exosomes. So you're getting some exosomes in chicken soup.
Mm.
You're getting exosomes in bone broth. You're getting exosomes when you eat bone marrow. And exosomes can often survive extreme temperatures. So even cooked, you're getting that. Many plants, fruits and vegetables, make exosomes that interact with our cells. That's right. Completely different species have highly preserved peptides and growth factors and proteins. Let me mention one. Heat shock protein 70. Heat shock protein is if you were placed in hot temperature, like if you lived in Finland and you did a sauna 3 to 5 times a week, hot sauna, like 165, 170 degrees plus for 20 to 25 minutes, you will live longer. You will have less cardiovascular disease. You have less, I think, all-cause mortality. It's been a minute since I looked at that. But why? Because it causes your cells to release something called HSP70, heat shock protein 70. Well, that's in exosomes that our stem cells make. It's an anti-inflammatory peptide. It stimulates autophagy to the senescent cells, gets rid of those useless cells that are taking up space and resources. And that way you have more, your cells are younger as a percentage. That means you're younger as a percentage biologically. So we see heat shock protein in berries, fruits, and vegetables. It's the same peptide we make, and you can get it from hot sauna. You can get it from different types of hormesis. Hormesis means a slight stress on your body to build resilience. Examples would be high intensity exercise, hot sauna, cold plunge, fasting. Those all stimulate autophagy, which, getting rid of bad cells, and anti-inflammatory and youthful activities of your good cells.
Well, I just keep thinking about the sauna right now, and I'd like to be in Finland.
Same. Go.
I don't have a sauna, but it's in the works. Like 2025 is my year for a sauna, but I'm all about sweating, right? I was actually having a conversation with some ladies yesterday about this, about the importance of sweating. There's so many different things, but we didn't even talk about the changes that it can make in the body with keeping us younger.
Right.
When I think about sweating or a sauna, I'm thinking about opening up detoxification pathways, but of course everything is connected, right? That's very fascinating. How about are there any contraindications for stem cells or exosomes? Are you currently suffering with Hashimoto's? Have you been told there is nothing you can do? Are you tired of the never-ending fatigue? Are you ready to overcome the debilitating brain fog, anxiety, joint pain? I created a masterclass where we dive into the underlying root causes of Hashimoto's so we can get you on a different pathway. One that leads to not only improving your symptoms, but transforming your health. For now, I'm offering this masterclass for free because I know how it feels to keep searching for answers and coming up empty-handed. If you'd like to gain instant access to this masterclass, comment down below masterclass and I will send you the link. Now, back to today's episode.
Well, interesting. So, since I've been doing this, we've avoided giving them to people with cancer not because we're worried, we just don't know what it'll do. And there's recent evidence from some colleagues of mine And admittedly, I just came back from a think tank a week ago of some exosome power users, regenerative guys here in the States, that we formed a group, and one clinician is seeing wonderful results. But I'm looking at a subset of immune cells in our body, white cells called natural killer cells that make exosomes that selectively kill cancer cells. And we're trying to get those NK exosomes, because it would be a wonderful treatment, in between sort of chemotherapy rounds. It'd be a wonderful treatment maybe instead of chemotherapy. It would be a wonderful preventative potentially, in people with high risk. So we are looking at these sort of, specialized exosomes coming down the line. Right now, it's just generic stem cell derived exosomes, but this field is exploding.
Well, and I really appreciate the transparency with talking about cancer, that, that if we don't have enough research, but the potential there it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting because, again, my background's oncology, thinking about treatments and trying to find one that's not going to be as destructive to the body. And, most people don't want to have side effects, but those are things that are actually just killing things off, including good cells in the body, where this doesn't sound like it's negatively impacting us. Just keep that statement.
Right. I mean, I see that. So we're putting together, state-of-the-art injection facility with image guidance that I hope to bring online in 2025, where we can, my goal is to have people with bloodborne cancers and solid tumors where we would inject them non-surgically, but using, image guidance, put the NK exosomes right into them. There have been some animal models where that's been effective. And I think this should be made available to people, at least on a compassionate use basis, until it's more widespread.
It absolutely should be made available, and we should be able to talk about it.
Well, we are, and I appreciate you for having a podcast, because as we've learned here, it really is the tip of the spear of free speech. So, good for you. Thank you. It's a
I will
service.
not be censored. Definitely not. How about how often is this something? Because you said it has lasting effects because it's changing our actual cells.
Right.
But is there? Because I can see I have a potential to go maybe overboard with things. Like you mentioned HIIT workouts earlier. I used to do them every day, which is not beneficial. Right. If you're in some individuals and most people, we need recovery time. Is there anything like that with this?
Well, I mean, listen, for the joint work, we try to do a one and done. And that's not always the case. We have some people that need a little extra. If you have an autoimmune and hyperinflammatory situation, that's intravenous, and you might do that, every few months, depending on your needs. And then we have the biohacking, anti-aging longevity enthusiasts like me. I do it every few months, just for energy and preventative nature. But I have easy access to it, right? It's here in my clinic. I just have my nurse hook me up and do an IV.
I was going to ask you about that. I'm like, is that a wrong question to ask? Like, so doc, like, are you doing this on yourself?
Yeah, I'm juicing over here. Come on over. We're here in the greater Las Vegas area in Henderson, Nevada.
Wow.
And most of the work we do is remote, like through this type of video interaction. And we only invite people here who are candidates, and people don't mind, coming, spend a few days and see a show, have a nice dinner, and get their exosomes.
So you're doing it for like a biohacking purposes, which I'm very interested in that, right? Yeah. Because I'm sure the listener has heard this term because it's very popular. So you're noticing a difference, like with energy levels, you said.
Yeah, energy, sleep. I sleep, much deeper after a treatment. I have a few old aches and pains and injuries here and there that tend to get real quiet for a while. I can work out better, and I'm not sore during the recovery after a workout. I feel a little mental boost. That does not mean to imply that I feel diminished mental capacity. Other times it's just like I'll come into work the next day and sit at my computer, and I'll just be much more efficient, get a lot done, and I have these ideas, and it's just I think some people call that a flow state. I might have a little closer to a flow state, but yeah, I mean, different people have different aspects of the IV. They feel different things, and I'll be honest, some people don't feel much at all. We've had people younger people, like in their 20s, that do this in the biohacking side that didn't feel anything, but they track their HRV on an Oura Ring or an Apple Watch, and their HRV has jumped, and that's a very sensitive health metric. So.
Yes, I've got one of those, and I track it, and my ring is telling me I need to reduce my stress levels because my HRV is going down. So it was real great for a long time, but this, like I talk about all the time, what's happening between our ears, the thoughts, our the feelings that we have. I don't believe that we can biohack or supplement our way out of like shit habits.
No, you can't. And, adaptability is important, and how you respond, and how long that respond lasts, and how you brush things off is a wonderful strategy, and does impact the inflammation in your body.
I'm very interested because you said that you can feel the difference. And when you were describing it like a boost, like something's a bit different, like more focus, it's absolutely not the same thing. So this is not apples to apples. But I haven't I haven't received any exosomes, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But I liken it to when I started, like, I use amino acids. I started using it, and I can feel it. And I tell people, like, it's like I got a little boost. I imagine the boost you're getting is bigger, like a bigger boost.
Everyone's different.
Yeah. And not everybody, when I tell people that, can you feel it? Some people are like, no, because we're all different. And that could be either we're not tapped into these, it might be subtle changes that are happening within the body, or if we're not actually having a change or a benefit.
Right. Everyone's different. And that's why this is about making it customized for the individual and that individual's biology. We like to look at, inflammatory markers before and after, things like that. But how you feel is the best measure in my mind for it. It's not the only measure. It's a great measure. And even if you don't feel it, as long as we have some metric, the HRV or something, to know you're biologically benefiting in some way. Yeah.
Yes. And since you're such a nerd in this field, a self-proclaimed nerd, like you said,
I am.
Anything else like on the horizon? Like you said, exciting things are, for 2025, like making, like what's coming? Like what's in the pipeline?
Yeah. So in the regenerative field, listen, there are, we talked about exosomes and even these specialized exosomes, but there are engineered exosomes coming. They're not going to be available for a while here because we're not really allowed to use any modified tissues. So, but in China, they're starting to play with, stuffing exosomes full of mitochondria for people with frailty to help develop muscle mass and bone density during the later years, because of course, both of those things are associated with longevity. We don't want frailty, or for mitochondrial disorders, things like that. So that's coming. You can also, other kinds of engineered exosomes are out there for different purposes. I think, oncology, cancer is a big area of regenerative medicine. There are labs that are doing what's called CAR T cells, where they, using the adaptive immunity or the antibody-based immunity, they take some tumor cells, they put them in some of your blood in a petri dish, and they create antibody, or they figure out the gene for that antibody or not the antibody, but the actual tumor protein, like a spike protein, but of a tumor. And then they insert that into back into your T cells, and they put those back into your body. And now you have more immunity against the tumor. That's called CAR T cells. That's actually getting FDA approval for certain things, because Big Pharma's got its hand on that. So for better or for worse. And we also are looking at induced pluripotent stem cells, going from the multipotent backwards in the embryonic lineage And those cells can do way more. They might be able to grow an organ in a petri dish. We may get to the point soon where we can regrow a finger or a limb. So our cells have that blueprint, and it gets shut off at some point, right? Many species can regrow parts, right? Tails of certain lizards and axolotl limbs, which is a strange iguana from Mexico, and then starfish. And even a human child less than age 5 or 6 can regrow the very tip of the finger. We lose that ability, but that means we had it at some point. We had it as a fetus. We can grow a limb. So we just need to learn through regenerative medicine research how to do that, how to turn it on and off again.
Well, in all this talk about petri dishes, like in another life, I would be a microbiologist, because that was something I loved. Obviously, I didn't get anywhere near the training necessary to do that.
Right.
But just the little glimpse I got, it's fascinating. The way in which we can isolate something down for a purpose is, I mean, that's like the epitome of science to me, and like hope for the future.
Right. I agree. The future is bright. We just need to put the resources in the right direction and educate people, let them know what's really out there through science and facts, and not through, what the media pushes. Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about, Jeff, that you feel the listener really needs to know, like a clinical pearls or nugget of some kind?
Oh gosh, I think we may have overwhelmed everyone, but listen, we involve ourselves here, at the highest end with not just regenerative medicine, but other peptides is a growing area that I'm very excited about. I don't have much background in gene therapy. I understand it. I know there are exciting things happening that will dovetail with a lot of these things. But we're finding that, the genetic influence on our biology is actually a smaller component than the epigenetic. Epigenetic means choices, lifestyle, supplements, nutrition, sleep, exercise. So we have a large role in how we end up, and you have to make a conscious choice every day to do the right thing for your health and longevity if you want that. Because I think when we overcome a lot of the nonsense in the food source and the additives, because we have such a developed healthcare system, and if we can improve the whole health insurance nonsense and the cookbook stuff that's going on out there, I can see life expectancy going up again.
That would be awesome, because it's the way things have been going. It's the opposite.
It's been, except for the COVID dip in life expectancy, it's been static really for a while. And I think part of that is the watered down healthcare system, because the money in healthcare is there. It's just getting extracted out at the greed level by publicly traded insurance companies. I know that's very topical right now, but it's not news.
Yeah. And just as a side note, when I was getting my insurance for my practice, one of the questions was, are you doing peptide therapy? You just made me think about that, because then they wouldn't have insured me.
They shouldn't ask those questions. And if you've ever prescribed insulin, you're doing peptide therapy. If you've ever prescribed melatonin as a supplement, you're doing peptide therapy.
Wow.
If you've ever used a GLP-1, you're doing peptide therapy. So they don't even know what they're asking. It's so vague.
Yeah. And people complain every day to me about insurance, and because insurance doesn't pay for wellness, it pays for sickness. But like I say, I don't make the rules. So what can we do?
Complaining to the wrong person. And that's what the insurance companies want. They want to pin the patient against the physician and the physician against the patient. And the only way we can fix this is for patients to say no to those companies, and for doctors to say no. So any physician out there, clinician or physician that's listening to this, if you have a contract to provide discount services for any healthcare insurance, sorry, but you are contributing to the problem.
Said we were going to get feisty today.
You said you weren't going to hold back, and I wasn't going to let you go alone.
You know what? Wholeheartedly agree. And I feel like that could be a whole other show, but why so many people, at least practitioners where I live, quit because of the injustice to the doctors, to the nurse practitioners, to like the people providing the service, and
Right.
to the patients
Right.
receiving it.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
it
There is
shouldn't
no
be this
justice.
way.
There's no justice. It's not a healthcare system. It's not health insurance. They should not be allowed to use the word insurance unless they actually pay for what someone needs without
It's disease
often.
insurance.
It's not even that. They don't want to pay for anything. You pay money for someone to block you from getting what you might want or need.
Yes. Well, I commend you for steering in a different direction.
Thank you.
To change people's lives, change your own life, and to bring awareness that we don't have to accept our diagnosis. I mean, okay, I'm putting words in your mouth again, but that's
You did it right. You did it right. Thank you very much for that.
that's
I am happy to do it. I like to do it for people. I love to, this is the surgeon's ego, right? We love to help people. We love them to come and say, thank you. I did great. And sometimes that has to come through something different than what the cookbook says.
And I would argue oftentimes it needs to come from something different than the cookbook or the cookie cutter approach, because, that might work with some, but probably not most. And then
I'm no longer drinking the Kool-Aid just like you.
Then there's like a delay. There's a delay of feeling better. So, I mean, I have absolutely loved this conversation. And I need to find and see if I can qualify so I can come to Las Vegas.
Come on out. Yeah.
How can the listener best learn more about what you do? Like, what's the best way to contact you?
Thank you. My practice, we changed the name to Recelebrate, because you're celebrating the renewal of your cells. And our website, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the good stuff out there we use that word Recelebrate, and it's RECELLEBRATE. You can go to recelebrate.com, find us very easily, reach out. We love to meet new people. We do remote consultations. If you need an MRI or tests that you don't have, we can order it remotely and then review. We share screen and review images all the time. And if something we can help you with, I'd love to offer you that as an option, especially if you're facing some kind of joint or spine surgery. Give me a chance to help you maybe avoid that.
Well, I'm going to link all of that below for the listeners so that you can just quickly get over there and check out your awesome website. I have loved this conversation. I feel like I learned a lot. And even if we overwhelm some people, they can listen to it multiple times. So I'm
Please
all for
do.
it.
And again, I've loved this too. I'm happy. If you ever need any advice on any of these topics, consider Recelebrate and myself, phone a friend for you and your practice. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this with everybody.
Absolutely. And yes, you're going to be my phone a friend. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on.
Thank you. Take care.